you're listening to Julie Taylor, and this is Julie and Company. Our guest today is Shelley Mizener. Shelley is a philanthropist and community leader. I think she's very well known by the majority of you, but for the few who don't, we're having her today on our show. Hi, Shelley.
Nice to be here. Happy to be here.
I'm thrilled you're here. I know you are a pioneer of a lot of the social movement and volunteering in our community. And I was wondering, can you tell me more about your vision of community?
Well, I think you should understand that my roots are extraordinarily deep. I had the privilege of being raised by two parents who were very, very devoted to their community. And so I learned from a very young age the value of the community and the pillars of our community, which I believe are the culture. It's whether it be the museum or the radio station or the theater, all of those are really the values that reflect Knowlton, and the having done 17 years of real estate, it's also a big attraction factor for many people, whether they realize it or not.
I agree with you, and I think it's not an accident that you start by saying, when it comes to community, family first. There is the first pillars, our family, our parents, family life. That's the first community we're exposed to. I'd go on to say perhaps school community would be one, and definitely the general community at large, and the rallying points there too. Thank you. And what would you say, having grown up in Knowlton and the region, what would you say the good side of growing up in a smaller community is, and are there any downsides?
Well, for sure, the good point is that just like many famous people have quoted, that it's not your parents that raise the children, it's the community at large. And I had the privy of having a mother that was very involved at Knowlton Academy and the Home Ec program, which is where my secret garden mission came from. I think that now, having beaten stage 4 cancer and recognizing the importance of the food and where it comes from and what we put in our body matters, it was easy to follow in her footsteps and recognize that what we put back into the community really matters.
And any difficulties navigating a smaller community? Because, I mean, at childhood, I'm sure it's very reassuring, but as a young teenager, maybe it's a little confining. Can you recall any moments where it might have not been ideal, or you might have dreamt of something?
Actually, it's actually the opposite. I'm a single mom, and when I had my son, it was very clear to me that I would like him to have the same quality of childhood that I had. So raising him in Knowlton was a very easy decision, from riding my horse down Main Street to the Pony Club to having him ride his bicycle all around town and not be afraid, even from a very young age.
Right. So to feel confident, you think you need to live in a safe environment, and that's what this community represented for you.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about your childhood. I know your mother, were you close to her?
Oh, I was very, very close to my mother. I was very lucky. My grandmother ran the general store on my father's side. So we lived on the main four corners of town. So my father used to deliver groceries to everyone. And my mother was raised by Blackwood, which her brother was the mayor for forever. My grandmother ran the general store on the main floor, and we lived upstairs. And my other grandmother was married to the horse dealer, so my grandmother would come with horse and carriage, or in the wintertime, horse and sleigh, and take us to Knowlton Academy to give my mother a break.
That's adorable. What year are we talking about?
Well, I was born in 1961, so it would have been in the 60s.
So you were saying that you were close to your mother. And what about your father?
I was close to both. I was closer to my mother. We were 4 girls. My mother and father wanted 4 boys, and they had 4 girls. So by the time they got to number 3, there wasn't a lot of room on my dad's lap. So I figured that I'd have my mom all to myself, which ended up being. And I think that I lived a life for my mother that she might not have done. Community was really about hers, and from a very young age I started traveling and adventuring and figuring out what I wanted to do. And ironically enough, before she passed away, she realized, although that I was the most adventurous of all, when it came time to grow my family, I was the only one that came back and raised my family here.
Right.
But it was because of the quality of life that we could offer to the children and to ourselves.
Absolutely. I agree. I had to leave as well to grow my children. But when they were older, but coming back it's hope for me. I think there's nowhere I'd want to be more invested than a community that is so rich in people in culture through people, diversity, roots. I'm sure you can go on and tell me much more already.
Later in life, I learned how to be part of the theater, and one of my first experience actually was I was casted as a retired whore, which kind of sounds funny, but it was very actually interesting to experience because it was outside of my comfort zone, but it was dinner theater, so you had to ad lib during the meals. And having fun with it, I would go up to some elderly men that might not have been perfectly correct with me as far as a youth was concerned, and I'd start stroking their heads and saying, "Remember me?" in a very sexy voice as I would lean in, and the whole table would roar with laughter. The gentleman would turn very red with embarrassment because he probably knew what I was talking about, but I healed. There was a certain level of me healed, and so I recognized the importance of play. And letting your egos go and not being afraid of making mistakes and pretending to be somebody else, which is what I encourage everyone to do. And after my stage 4 cancer experience, I realized the strength of the communities within the community. The Knowlton players are a phenomenal family.
And if we go back, because you believe in letting go of the ego and not wearing masks, at the same time, role play was essential to your healing.
Absolutely.
As a paradox.
Not just the role playing, but the connection and the support that the community, people that I hadn't been close to my whole life or for whatever reasons, were bringing me meals, were driving me to the doctors, to walking my dog. The outpouring of love and support that I had through the experience showed me that that's where our real wealth is.
Right. So we're going back to the theater days. What age might have you been then?
Oh, 40s. So it wasn't something that I had done in high school. So it was really out. And if anybody is interested, I have a terrible memory. I couldn't remember lines. I was very sketchy about the whole idea. But I had a girlfriend, Laura Teasdale, a brilliant writer who was making these dinner theaters and saying, "Come on, Shelley, you'd be great. You'd be great." So sure enough, she gave me a small part. She got me immersed. Now I'm addicted. There's another dinner theater coming up. Our famous Knowlton players, Jessica Brown, has recently written a new one that's called Mad Mad Love that will be out before we know it. So you'll be able to come. And it's always open. There's always welcoming new people, which is part of the community. So if you're out there and you don't know people and you'd like to get connected, I highly recommend that you try it.
Right. So you're in your 40s. You did that for many years?
I still do it.
You still do it.
I'm
correct.
addicted.
Right. So you did that in the 40s, and then you were struck with illness.
Yeah, well, the
what
illness
age would you be then?
Is much later. I'm in my 60s now, so it was in 2019 that I had my double mastectomy. And so it was shortly thereafter that I realized just how strong that community was and how much they're prepared to support everybody within that community family.
So you were in mid-50s?
Yeah, late
50s. So would you say it's two different seasons, the 40s and the 50s?
Well, I was raised by a mother who said your life is your movie and that you're the star, and you always get to pick whether you want to play the role of the victim or the hero.
Right.
And being that I've been through very many traumatic experiences, from multiple cancer battles to bankruptcy to child rearing on my own, loss of business, loss of health, loss of both parents, I've always chosen to play the role of the hero and not the victim. So it was just about rewriting my story anew every day.
Did that make you unpopular, the fact that you saw yourself as such a strong woman and you could move through all kinds of adversity?
I think that people who don't know me probably are very intimidated by me, especially the fact that I played competitive rugby until I was 51. But I think once people know who I really am, that fades away.
I think that's true, because maybe 20 years ago I didn't know you, but you represented a certain amount of success, beauty, and establishment when it comes to Knowlton. And I didn't know you then. And we had a walk maybe 6 months ago, and I got to know you, and I see such a wonderful, warm woman who is generous and present.
I think the Harley
open.
might have been a bit intimidating too for people, being that I rode a really big Harley for many years, and people were very intimidated by that. But once they got to know me and they realized that I also had a son that got named Harley, and that I was more of a mom than a badass, and that,
Hi, would you like to be on the show? Do you have any questions or ideas you'd like to share? Go to julietaylor.ca and leave me a message. What would you say your 5 greatest accomplishments are?
Oh boy.
To date.
Well, I'm very, very proud of the Secret Garden. Just before my father passed away, the Secret Garden became a reality, and the community donated over $400 in his memory just to try to make it happen, which was the beginning of what it is. And now it's growing. The curriculum is actually incorporated into the garden. The men's shed have jumped on board. We have the support of the town and the community, and the children are learning.
All right, that's lovely. So when did the Secret Garden start?
8 years ago.
8 years ago. So it was an idea.
Yes.
Where were you standing with this idea that came to your ears? What were the next steps? What did you do?
Well, my mom passed away with a very aggressive form of cancer in 2005, and in 2006 I got diagnosed with the same gene. So it was about cultivating change. And because I'm very passionate about the garden and I know the importance of food, it was about connecting the people back to Mother Nature. The slogan of the garden is a community that sows together, grows together.
It's perfect. I can totally see that. I think that especially our region with the farms and family farms, that being sort of a safeguarding of our nature, because if that land is devoted to agriculture, it won't get bought up and developed in other ways. And so we're kind of holding the vision of, my feeling with Knowlton is that I have such reverence for the people who kept it this beautiful this long, and our duty is to carry on that legacy of safeguarding nature, that which is, and it should always be like that.
I couldn't agree with you more. The cool part is that if you take the ferry trail and you walk behind the two schools, you'll see that our elders left an incredible amount of green space between the backyards of both of those schools, with the river running through it, where the garden is. And now all of our local artists are making it more beautiful by doing the birdhouses and having different themes every part of the season. It's magical. And, you know, they planted apple trees and oak trees and butternut trees all along the rivers. They were way ahead of their time, in my opinion.
I think it's beautiful. So at the Secret Garden, you have this vision, which I am totally on board with, and you decided to connect the art of food, nature, and learning, and children and empowerment to a certain degree. So you had to make a few phone calls, I suspect? I mean, how did it all come together?
Actually, it was much easier than that. I was working at a garden center after my first battle with cancer, and I lost my business. And the commissioner of the school board came in, and he wanted to know if, for himself in his retirement, it would be a good idea to have a vegetable garden so he could provide for his family and neighbors. And I responded quickly that it was an excellent idea, but before he did it for himself, that he do it for the children of the school and learn in the process. And the very next day, the principal called, and they were moving forward, and it hasn't stopped since.
Lovely. But you were a leader in organizing it?
Yes.
That's
visionary.
important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's very important. So you had to call on people for material, organizing the curriculum, or the...
I think when you understand what real leadership is, it's about bringing out the best of all of the individuals. I think that, I mean, I played competitive sports my whole life, so I knew what it was like to be a captain and to be a leader. And really, to be a leader, it's not about doing all the jobs yourself. It's about bringing the best out of everybody. So I would tell people, you know, you're the potato guy. Well, we need a potato guy. And if you're the one with the deep bank accounts, well, okay. If it's time on your hands, you want to do preserves, everybody in the community has something to put into it. And it's up to the person to discover what that is in the process.
The leader to discover what the person
No, the
has?
person, the individual. Everybody has something to give back, like our wonderful Ivan here that's doing our recording. We couldn't do it without him. So that's his way of giving back to his community, is providing us a service to be able to have a platform for everybody to be able to hear all of these wonderful stories.
Right. So in your leadership role, your job is to resonate with everyone, their strengths, and bring them on board.
Yes.
I agree with that. Just a small anecdote. At the time at Saint-Édouard, the primary school, there was an awareness that the food was trucked in from Massé-Vanier, and it was mostly processed foods and from an American company. So at the time I was on the SIA, and we did a small study, two mothers and myself, to see if there was an opportunity to reopen the cafeteria and to prepare food on site for the children. Naturally, at the time, we were very inspired by what was going on in Sutton. There had been a lot of coverage of that school and the food quality offered to the children. And so there was just a beautiful opportunity, and it all opened up, and there was a job created in our community for a mother to come in and cook, and all the children were quite excited about this. they were involved, and they took turns in clearing after the meals and or preparing on certain weeks. And so it was a nice community event. Food will definitely rally spirits. So, Shelley, Secret Garden is definitely one of your accomplishments. Can you think of another one?
Well, more recently, I just did a heritage garden for the Paul Holland House to make it an educational experience for not just tourists, but for our local children, for them to have grasp the idea of what it would have been like for people back in the day to have grown their food locally.
You mean with original tools?
Well, more so about what a garden would have, mostly with root vegetables, and what it would have looked like, what would have grown, and what they could have, how they would have sustained themselves locally with just growing their own food. Because now we're very lucky because food gets shipped in from all over the world, so you can have a large diversity of choices. But back in the day, there's a reason why Quebecers eat poutine, because potato was something that was very easy for local people to grow and to keep over winter months.
So tell me about this project a little more. How many years have you been involved with?
I was director of the museum, Denis Piquet. I suggested it 3 years ago, so 2 years ago was the starting of the creation of it, and this year I had other women that volunteered to help create it, so it's in its second year.
How big a team do you have?
It's not really a team. Again, it's about asking people within the community to help. I had a gentleman from the men's shed that was helping with the fence posts, because obviously a woman wouldn't have done it all by herself, and it was and a couple of women joined in and made raised beds so that we could plant the plants together.
And you'll do it again this summer?
Yes.
And so you would like some people perhaps to come forward and get involved?
I think people underestimate how many places there are rooms for people to get involved, whether it be in the theater or at the museum or at the radio station or the secret garden. Whatever your talents are, there's always room for volunteers. And in fact, more recently, I believe that the municipality is making a directory of volunteers.
Lovely.
Where people can say that they have availabilities and what their skills are, so that we connect more of the people to whatever projects need the help.
So they could get in touch with the city if they wanted to get in touch with you. That would be one of the ways that they could get to Shelley Mizener and all her.
I think the best way to get a hold of me is through CIDI 99.1, your community radio.
Wonderful. All right. So did you have to do any research and decide how to set up the beds to be authentic to the region?
I probably should have, but I followed my instincts.
Wonderful.
My parents and I had an Uncle Bill that lived to be 101 that provided our family with a lot of groceries over the years, and he had a garden, and we spent a lot of time in his garden. So I went from what I had learned through childhood.
Lovely. And so what would a third accomplishment be? To date. I need to say to date because I don't think you're done.
Beating stage 4 cancer. I don't think it's about beating it either. I think it's about making shifts. I think if you look at cancer as being a battle, then it will be. If you look at it as an opportunity to make some changes, then that's what's going to happen. And I wanted to be a better version of myself, and I was prepared to challenge Big Pharma and say there are other ways of healing ourselves other than the traditional chemotherapy and radiation. So I talked to my oncologist and I said, maybe, just maybe, we're going to learn some together through this with nutrition and foods that cancer doesn't like, and walking,
right,
and meditation and fasting and all of those things that Big Pharma don't make any money off of.
Were those new things to you? Did it open you up to new opportunities with your own health, or did you have all this?
No, absolutely. I think, in fact, I made that very clear to my oncologist from the very beginning. Being an athlete and having the discipline, and my parents being gone and my son being grown up, and the fact that I'm a professional gardener by trade and that's what I do for a living, I knew that I had a window of opportunity to be the difference and to cultivate the change that needed to happen. And so it all kind of fit together. The secret garden was there for me. I had a boss that said, don't worry about your job, even if you just stand there and look. I don't care. You just can oversee the job. I think that it was the lack of fear. It was the faith. I think we either have fear or we have faith, and my faith has always been very strong. I don't think anybody is necessarily, we all know we're going to die.
Your faith in what, Shelley?
Faith in life.
And faith in yourself, I
and
suspect.
Myself. Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's where there's a wonderful marriage. You have to have faith in yourself and to know you're resourceful enough to hit the walls and then get past them.
Well, it's also, too, the messages that you're carrying. I mean, I had not just my mother telling me that my life was my movie and I was a star, but I had my father telling me that the only thing in life I could be sure about was change, and either it was happening to me or I was cultivating it. So it was an opportunity for me to cultivate change.
Isn't that part of our CIDI?
It's my radio
slogan?
program, Cultivating Community with Shelley and Cash.
Right, got it. So you had faith in life, faith in yourself. From the time you heard that you had a diagnostic of cancer to the time that you could look back and know the worst was behind you, how many years?
Well, my first battle was 2006, and we're 2024, so it's been quite a long journey, but I was stage 4 in 2020. So I think that it was a process. It was a day-to-day thing. One of the things that I took it upon myself was walking. It's walking in nature, meditation, being in touch with nature, grounding, and all of those things. So I was on a mission. I started walking with my four-legged friend. First year it was 2.6 kilometers. Second year it was 5.6 kilometers. We've rolled over 10,000 kilometers.
Is that per year?
Per day.
Per day. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. Yes, per day.
Yeah. And I think that once my oncologist recognized that not only was I changing my diet, but I was going to physically exercise, I was going to meditate, I was going to fast, I had the discipline of an athlete, and that my life and my health was top priority, and that I wasn't just going to say yes because they wanted to put fear in me that I might die, because we're all going to die. It's a question about how.
Yeah. So if we go back to start seeing some progress, because, you know, it's not all success. From that time when you hear that, you got to feel it in the pit of your stomach, and then you got to move through that, and then you got to give yourself a chance, and then you got to get your oncologist on board, and then you got to know you got a team, and then you start making the changes, and then you're monitored, and then I'm just assuming.
I think you have to realize that when you are the star of your own movie, you also choose your co-stars. And I already had pretty good co-stars. My sisters, although they were very much against the idea that I wasn't saying yes to chemotherapy and radiation, I had many people within the community that were supportive, and one of which was the pharmacist who explained to me that when they were doing the blood test, how I could do the monitoring of my own cancer count. So it was stage 4, it was 122 cancer count, and for women it's normal to be under 30. Well, she shared that with me. So then after that, I was very insistent with my oncologists that if they were going to take blood out of me every month, that I needed to know what that number was so that I could see my own progress in the journey. So was my walking working, and was my fasting working, and was my meditation working? And my sister kept the statistics, and every day, every time I had a blood test, the oncologist understood that he had to share those numbers with me. It wasn't just about red blood count and white blood count.
I'm so happy to hear that.
It was really about working together in collaboration and being a little bit persistent with my oncologist, explaining to him that, you know, if you do a PET scan, you can't wait 6 weeks for the results because it creates unnecessarily stress. And he was right away. He was like, really? That's how it happens? And I'm like, really? Now he texts me the same day.
Beautiful. I think that's so important. So you've empowered yourself. You stayed the main player in your life, and you recruited your co-stars. I love that.
And now I'm on a mission. I want to be able to share that story, that there are a lot of incredible people doing wonderful things like acupuncture. The doctor never recommended acupuncture to me, but we have a local girl, Mona, that does acupuncture here. And within 24 hours of doing acupuncture, my wound was less sore, less red, less stressed.
Lovely.
So when I went back to my oncologist, I said, how come you didn't recommend it? He said, well, we're not allowed, but you can. So I'm writing a book, and I'm creating a web page to give all of these wonderful tools that have worked for me to be able to share them with the masses.
We're going to be listening for that. What's the working title at the moment of that book?
Wild Pony Ride.
I love it.
My nickname's Wild Pony because I have a theory. We're born in a hospital the shape of a box, be taken home to a house that's a box, our bedroom's a box, the school.
We die in a box.
The school's a box. We listen to boxes, we watch boxes. Now everybody takes their boxes with them everywhere they go, and when you die, they put you in another box. Dare to live outside the box and at least recognize how boxed in you might be, and or how much programming you might have, so that you can make the changes and be brave enough to live outside of those boxes.
So you had to go through that process, mainly through the gift
The hospital
of
was a
cancer.
new box.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it.
Right.
I'd had a very happy, healthy life most of my life, other than a couple of broken bones from sports. But it was a new box for me, and it was a window of opportunity. I believe my oncologist has been super supportive, and he's at the SHU Hospital in Sherbrooke and working with residents. So they're too very keen. As I explained to him, I said, basically, we're guinea pigs, because if we had the cure, we'd all be cured.
Yeah.
So if it's a learning curve, let me be a guinea pig on my terms and not yours.
Absolutely. So there'd be so much to say on that, and I think we should do something else on that and how to cure cancer naturally, how it happened for you, and what tips you might have for other people. So if you want to, we could meet up again on that.
Be very happy to share.
And your number 4?
My experience riding through most of North America on a Harley Davidson.
Were you alone?
Most of it. Not always. I mean, I think that if you have ever experienced riding motorcycles, you know that you're never alone, because there's always all brothers and sisters out there that are actually enjoying. We live in a beautiful part of the world, and I think people are over-programmed by division, whether it be Quebec, Canada, U.S., which state. It's all magical, and there's beautiful, wonderful people everywhere you go. If you're not full of fear and if you're adventurous enough, you can really actually experience the magic.
I believe in all of that, but I believe also that you have to come from a place of self-reliance to draw in all those great relationships so that you're not constantly expecting things from others, which puts strain and pressure on relationships and might set them up for disappointment. So your outlook, your glorious way of seeing the world comes from, I think, a strong fire of self-reliance. That's my point of view.
Well, I think that actually comes, and I credit both of my parents. They wanted 4 boys, they got 4 girls. My father was the coach of the women's ball league from a very young age, and we learned teamwork. We learned what it was to win and learn what it was to lose, and not to judge other people and to raise other people up within the sports world. That had a lifelong influence and continues to have.
And the discipline you mentioned.
Absolutely.
That can pull you through some dark places.
Absolutely. Everybody has shadows. Everybody has dark places. If you feed the fuel to the fear, it will grow.
I agree. They say it depends on which wolf you feed.
Absolutely.
That you get an outcome worthy of that promise. What would you tell your younger self?
Keep going. Just keep going.
Keep going. I like that. So we only did 4. Is there a 5th one that comes to mind before we wrap?
Oh, absolutely. The radio station. My father, I'm second generation here at CIDI. My father had a jazz show in his 80s. He thought that it was very, very important for our community to keep their local voice and to develop a community spirit throughout the radio. And he had a wonderful jazz show. And so now I am second generation CIDI with 2 shows, one called Cultivating Community with Shelley and Cash, the famous 4-legged dog that every child in the community loves. And My Dad's Jazz, a collection of albums that I inherited from my father that I love to share with the community. And more recently, I've accepted the position as the president because I'm taking my leadership skills and I'm building a wonderful team here at CIDI to be able to provide the best possible service to our community.
And I agree, having a strong voice, sharing it and radiating out and pulling in your community. I think what you said earlier, whether it's boundaries or language, it's all artificial. The heart connects all of us and the voice. Thank you for your passage here at my show, and perhaps we'll meet again.
My pleasure.
If you have any questions or you'd like to be on the show, you have any comments, do get in touch with me. Just go to julietaylor.ca and drop me a line there.